Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today we're fortunate to have as our guest Robert BoWarren from Shelburne Falls. As you may remember from an earlier program, Bo is a highly accomplished world traveler who recently accomplished his lifelong quest of visiting every country in the world, all 195 of them. During today's program, the second of a multi-part series, Bo will be informing us about the creation of the World Travel Learning Center, a non-profit organization set up to educate travelers and potential travelers, as well as encourage people of all ages to visit the world's countries, and in turn, expand their appreciation, understanding, and acceptance of people and cultures different than their own. Let's start by meeting Bo and then finding out all about the World Travel Learning Center. Welcome, Bo. So delighted you're able to join us again today.
Thank you, Jay. I'm glad to be here.
And as we can see from the logo, the image right behind us, the focus of our discussion is going to be sort of an outgrowth of your travels, the World Travel Learning Center. Could you share, to start us off, a little bit about the inspiration, the mission behind it?
Yeah, our logo, the World Travel Learning Center, was created after March 10th of this year at 11:54 a.m. when I entered the last country in the world, Andorra, for my capturing the 195 countries of the world and having visited them. Over the years, I had never spoken about my travels. It was a very personal thing. But over the years, I had been criticized time and time again. I do mean constructively criticized, for not sharing with others the good fortune that I've had to see the whole world. I, on the other hand, took the position that it was a personal thing and it was something that I didn't really want to become public about. But in getting older, and of course I started 36 years ago, I realized that what I have seen in the world and what I have learned is quite different than what most people think about their world. And I've kind of acquiesced to my critics in saying that I will go public with my story. So, as I say, on March 10th, after I'd finished all the countries of the world, I decided to create a company, a private nonprofit company called the World Travel Learning Center, for the sole purpose of educating people of the world as to what I believe I've seen as a result of my 36 years of travel, and to ultimately convince people that the world is not nearly as dangerous a place as one might think. Here I am, living proof of that. I'm a pretty small man. I'm burnt out, middle-aged hippie kind of guy. I'm modest resources, but somehow I was able to visit every country on earth, Somalia, Sudan, Yemen, Iraq, wherever. And here I am with all 10 of my fingers and 10 of my toes and no worse for wear. And with a rather interesting story about what's really going on in our world, and that is that the world isn't nearly as dangerous as it has been presented to us through media.
You know, we're going to call attention to the website a little later in the program, but what are some of the features of the World Travel Learning Center that you and others working with you envision?
Well, the purpose of the World Travel Learning Center is to help educate people as to what's going on in the world through my eyes. It's notable to mention that when I say through my eyes, what I've seen is it took 36 years, and I saw it through my eyes, not through the filtering of someone else's eyes. So to be sure that the model was not tainted, I agreed early on not to take funds from organizations like IBM or Rolex or whatever, which had been offered to me to help sponsor my travels. I didn't want anyone to question that my view of something was as a result of someone else's influence. My view of the world is simply my view of the world as I've walked about and observed. I never was out there to change anyone's opinion or to interfere with the politics or anything else in the world. I was out there like Darwin, simply to observe. And so for 36 years I've walked about the world observing what I've seen without interruption from a grant or a sponsor suggesting that I should go there, when I should go there, where I should go, etc.
You know, one fascinating feature that you were chatting about beforehand, that you started before the World Travel Learning Center and now you're continuing, is the Protégé program.
Oh, yes.
Would you highlight that, please?
Yes. In the many years that I've traveled, I've always felt it interesting to involve young people, because I feel that many of the answers and solutions to the world's problems lie in the young people. Educating young people of the world is to create a generation of people that can bring about change. And so as part of my walkabouts in the world, I always involve a younger person, and that person travels with me vicariously. Wherever I'm going in the world, they're there first and foremost. And the protege that I choose is always someone that realizes that this is not a game. This is real business. I'm on the road.
Yeah.
I'm looking for support. They're there to provide that support and the research, etc., that I need in order to know where I'm going, when I should go, how I go, where I'm staying, all kinds of information. And as a result of their walking about the world with me, they learn through my eyes that the world is a little bigger than they might have thought, and they see things quite differently. There have been a number of proteges over the years. Many of them are in college now. Some of them are younger yet. And they benefit from it in the sense that they get an insight to a part of the world that's bigger than where they are. And I benefit from it in that they provide me a lot of information that's necessary for me to do my walkabouts.
And I think, as we learned, this is really a two-way street, incorporating children, young people from the States, but also throughout your travels,
Yes.
children are an important part as far as meeting and learning from.
As I said in my first program series with you, I got templed and tombed out long ago. For the last 20 or more years, my travels have not been about the great man-made wonders of the world or whatever. They've been about the people of the world. And as a subset of that, the most interesting part of the people of the world, to me, have been the children, because they're very informative. There's no political correctness to children. If I want to know what's really going on, I talk to the kids and they let me know without any kind of editing or whatever. So the children of the world, I believe, are the solution to the issues that exist in the world, and they're the ones that I get most of my information from. Also, incidentally, that it is the children of the world that almost in every country speak English. If you're under 15 years old, somebody has taught you a fair amount of English. So I can communicate with many cultures through the children as opposed to the adults.
You know, one of the things you mentioned a few minutes ago were your walkabouts.
Yes.
And a key feature of that were the journals you kept.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate that you brought one in.
Yeah.
Would you please highlight what they look like and just give us a little bit of background?
Well, this is a typical journal, Jay. Many of the journals in my earlier years were from the countries I visited. But as I went along, I found that the leather-bound journals hold up better because they're under a lot of strain from being carried about in my walkabouts. And this is a typical leather-bound journal. There's about 40 of these journals. It's interesting to note that every day of my travels over the last 36 years are written in this journal before I go to bed at night. That's my rule, so I don't lose the essence of what happened that day. The journals are not literary in the sense that they don't read like a novel. They're more documentary in terms of showing the way that I went about traveling the world. In this particular case, this is last year. I believe I went to 15 or 18 countries, and this would be the routing that I took in going to those 15 or 18 countries. And there's all kinds of information here in terms of where I stayed and so forth and so on. And I list all the countries and expenses of what I did while I was there. From there, the journals are all structured very similarly with pictures and my daily thoughts in narratives written in handwriting. It's unusual today where everything's done electronically.
Right, definitely.
And they have all kinds of information that are designed for me to remember. So if I go to my journals and read my journals, I can elaborate quite detailedly about what happened or where I was, what it cost, who I saw.
And this information's going to be put in digital form that'll be available online.
This is all right now being downloaded and digitized, and will show up on the World Travel Learning Center's webpage over the next month. We have a webpage now, and we're loading that webpage right now, and over the next few months, we're going to be adding the 35 or 40 journal entries to that webpage so that you can go to that webpage, and if you're thinking of going to Africa, you can go to the continent of Africa and you can see the artifacts that I brought back from Africa, or you can see specific details in terms of what it cost me, how I got there, the different travel logistics, etc. Things that you'd want to know to go to, say, Lake Malawi in Central Africa, or to the Congo, or wherever. This will be true of all the continents of the world, including the South Pacific. So the 7 continents in the South Pacific, you can go to the exact area you want to go to, and you can read about my exploits in that part of the world.
Wonderful. You know, before we look at a few images from some of your travels, you were telling me one of the items that you bring on all your traveling expeditions happens to be right there. Would you please pick that up and highlight what we have here?
Well, since I started traveling, I always traveled with a set of dog tags because I travel alone. I don't travel with other people, and because I travel alone and I'm in very remote parts of the world, I keep these little dog tags. And with the exception of the dog tags, I have this little thing here, which is an interesting memoir from the Treasury. The Treasury in Jordan. The Treasury was that scene in Indiana Jones where you saw this literal treasury carved into the mountain there. It's an extraordinary place. It's in Petra. And I keep this as a memento from, this is a 2,000-year-old Roman coin.
Wow.
That travels with me as well, most everywhere in the world that I have the dog tags.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, let's move on, take advantage of these few wonderful images. If you could just share where you were here.
Here we have a bunch of Hindu children in Kandy, Sri Lanka. It's on the western side of Sri Lanka, and they're all swimming in the ocean there. This is a very, very beautiful part of the world, Sri Lanka. And there was a fellow by the name of Arthur D. Scott who invented the telescope. He's credited with inventing the telescope, and he also wrote and produced a number of movies, one of which was 2001 Space Odyssey. He was asked once, Jay, where his most favorite place in the world was, and he did not hesitate. He said Sri Lanka, and he moved to Sri Lanka because he said, Sri Lanka is the Garden of Eden of our world, and it is a very beautiful place.
What are some of the things you learned from the children or people of Sri Lanka?
Hindu people are like everyone else, except their belief is a little different, of course. The young Hindu children are here with their adult Hindu folks, and they're just having a fun day in the ocean in Kandy, Sri Lanka.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Another part of your journey.
This is a Muslim in the Sahara Desert. It's in the northern Sahara near Sagu, which is not far from the Dogon region, which is where the little people live. I could elaborate on that, but I won't. But I've been to all the areas of the Sahara, and the Sahara is the largest desert on Earth. It's an immense place, and this winter I hope to go to the Western Sahara, which is part of Morocco now, but I believe will become a country soon. I have never been to Western Sahara, but I've been to all the other parts of the Sahara.
Wow.
This is a person praying. This is Maasai warrior. What's interesting about this photograph is that he's on the island of Zanzibar, a beautiful, beautiful place off of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I actually bought 2 items from this fellow, one of which is this item here.
What do we have here?
Which is, all of the Maasai carry 2 items with them at all times. They carry this, which is a knife, which they use for knifey purposes. And let me just pull this up. And this other item here, which is a war club. And the Maasai are very extraordinary people. They use these war clubs for all kinds of purposes, but in particular in protecting their livestock from the lions and so forth. The Maasai warriors are extremely interesting in the sense that they have the whitest eyes of any people that I've ever witnessed, and it's because their diet is primarily blood from their cows.
Wow.
They have a diet of blood and milk, and a very fit, very tall people, very slender, very healthy.
You know, moving on to some other artifacts, we see the Maasai items there.
Yeah.
What do we see nearby, which you have laid out so brilliantly?
This tapestry here, I have many tapestries in my home in Bodwell's Ferry. This particular one comes from Guatemala, and I acquired it at Tikal, which is one of the larger Mayan ruins in Central America.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. And what are we highlighting here?
Here we have a hand-carved statue from Tibet. I acquired this in Lhasa, which is the capital of Tibet, and it's a monk that was acquired at the Summer Palace of the Dalai Lama, an extraordinary temple that I visited while I was in Lhasa.
Nice, nice.
Incidentally, I had traveled to Lhasa, Tibet, from Kathmandu, Nepal, where I had been trekking to Everest and so forth. And this is the artifact that I brought back from that part of the world. There's quite a story behind this artifact as it relates to the 13th Dalai Lama, but we don't really have time for me to get into that now.
Well, in that vein, somewhat amusing, most people think going to Everest is their lifelong conquest, and you cast it aside as on my way to Everest.
Well,
just to put in context what you've accomplished.
I'm not a mountain climber, but people will ask me what my criteria is in visiting a country, and it's not about checking off countries. One of the things that's required that I do is that I visit children of that country. Another is that I go to the north, south, east, and west geographic area of the country. A third would be to do whatever is unique or special about that country. As an example of that, to go to Nepal and to Kathmandu and not involve yourself in traveling or hiking in the Annapurna circuit or going to Everest or whatever, I couldn't say that I'd venture Nepal because it's so much part of their culture. So to travel to and to attempt climbing Everest, though I'm not a mountain climber, was important to me to say that I had experienced the essence of what that country is about.
And I think that's a really good point that underscores the value, the richness of the journals, and that what's going to be on the website is all this extended information about every country, not just a casual visit.
Yes, exactly.
And the other item that's up there that we have on the table.
Yeah, these are very special items to me. This item here and this item here were given to me as gifts. I traveled to Mongolia, to Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, which is the capital of Mongolia, during the festival of Nadam, which is, in my opinion, one of the most extraordinary festivals I've ever seen anywhere in the world. Nadam is the festival in honor of Genghis Khan, who we have all heard about, who conquered over 1/3 of the civilized world at that time, more than anyone ever since then. These objects, however, were very unusual in the sense that they're antique, and I was given these as a gift. I traveled from Ulaanbaatar into the Gobi Desert, 13 days on horseback. Now keep in mind that Mongolia is the 17th largest landmass country in the world. It only has 2 million people. 1 million live in Ulaanbaatar, and the other million people live in the 17th largest landmass on Earth country. That means that in 13 days that I traveled, I never saw a human being until the 13th day. And when I came across the Russian Gur in the middle of the Gobi Desert, I befriended the Cossacks that were living there, the husband and wife and their family, and I stayed with them for 3 or 4 days. While I was there, they invited me into their Gur to stay, and when I went into the Gur, I saw something that I've seen all over the world. that is a yin and a yang. And it was that there was a, keep in mind, this is 13 days, never having seen a human being on horseback.
Unbelievable.
When I went into the GUR, on the wall was a poster of Guns N' Roses. And the irony of that is that these people are very, very primitive, very nomadic tribes in the Gobi Desert, but Western civilization had even crept in there.
Wow.
And I have a whole dissertation about Western civilization's infiltration of primitive cultures and how, in some respects, it's okay, but if it's too quickly, it destroys the culture. So I was not pleased to see a poster of Guns N' Roses in such a remote place with such primitive people. In any event, before leaving, I was given this gift. It was their great-great-grandfathers. All Cossack warriors have them. It's all done in silver, and
it's really exquisite.
it has, there's a knife, chopsticks, and flint. And they carry them with them, and of course they're nomadic, so every day they use their knife, chopstick, and flints to start their fires and eat their food and so forth. I was touched by this. It's one of my most cherished artifacts in my home.
And right back here on the table, what are we highlighting?
This back here, Jay, is a very unusual piece. Again, it's an antique. It comes from the Garden Coast. I was traveling from South Africa to Cape Elizabeth. On the Garden Coast between South Africa and Cape Elizabeth, you'd think you were in Switzerland, not in Africa. It's all mountainous. It's extremely beautiful. It doesn't look anything like Africa. A lot of Dutch people live there, a lot of German people. A lot of your South African wines come from that part of the world. Just a beautiful part of Africa. And as I speak of Africa, I speak of Africa in its many faces. One of its faces is South Africa, which is extremely beautiful. There are other parts of Africa that aren't so graceful. But this is a wedding bowl. This is an antique wedding bowl carved with its tongs. And the wedding bowl is carved out of burl wood. It's one solid piece of burl wood, and it's quite rare. And anyway, I brought it back, and there's a story behind it, but we don't have quite enough time to go into the stories.
No, we definitely hope to have more time for stories, but before we get to that, we do want to highlight, since it's such an important piece of the World Travel Learning Center, and that's the website.
Yes.
And in the image we have here, I'm going to highlight each of the talking points, and then I'd like you to just maybe say a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
So the first one says about the mission of the center is to educate and encourage widespread world travel and understanding of the world's oneness, and to appreciate the world's diverse societies as friendly and welcoming.
Well, that is the essence of why I created this. I felt that I wanted my message to be very concise, very specific, not rambling on. My message to the world is that the world is not a dangerous place necessarily. There are certainly places in the world that are difficult, but I've traveled the whole world, as I said earlier, and here I am with my 10 fingers and toes. I'm not a particularly stature person. People can go out in their world and they'll find that it's very different than they've been informed, and will be very enlightened and pleased with it, I think.
It's wonderful to hear. The second point there is the world is not a dangerous place, just
well,
what you
just reiterated
picked up.
that it's not a dangerous place. It's on the contrary, it's as I've had in my journals, it's much more an inviting place than it is a dangerous place.
And then given this type of what's going to turn out to be global operation, most likely, number 3, you encourage and welcome anyone who shares the mission and would like help in supporting your efforts. And again, highlighting that you're a tax-exempt nonprofit corporation.
Yes, we are a 501(c)(3) corporation set up to do a number of things, one of which is to educate people of the world as to what's really going on in their world, while at the same time we hope to be philanthropic in what we're doing. And we have a number of philanthropic programs underway right now that, again, we don't have time to highlight them right now, but we hope to do things in particular to help children of the world and as well as the general population.
And the fourth point there highlights the web address, www.worldtravellearning.org, which is being updated almost daily and will be robust in just a short time.
Yes. Over the next month, we have a web page now, as you just noted, and there's quite a bit of content to it now. But over the next month or two, it'll be enhanced dramatically. Over the next year as well, there's a tremendous amount of information that's going to be put on the web page that hopefully will help people get a better insight as to what's going on in their world and how they might go out and engage in that.
And another way to stay in touch or get in touch is by email with the address info@worldtravellearning.org.
That's right. I mean, anyone that's interested in participating in our program, we'd love to have people join us because we hope to be involved in philanthropic causes and otherwise. We would be accepting funds from anyone that's looking for a private nonprofit to support. We've got a big agenda, and I think it's a good agenda. I think it's something the world desperately needs, and hopefully it's going to take off and really do wonderful things for people.
And you also have a Facebook page.
We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube page. We have a contacts list. We have a number of different ways in which you can be added to our program so that you're kept informed and can participate in a number of ways.
Nice, nice. And just showing this slide here also highlights the front page of the World Travel Learning Center right there as well.
Yeah.
And a number of the tabs that'll be available and growing as we speak as well. Beyond this, as we just have a couple minutes, not that this is enough and this will occupy a good bit of time, other ways that you would like to or envision sharing all the education and experiences that you've been fortunate to have through your travels with others between the website and maybe visiting different organizations?
Well, I hope to do speaking engagements. I encourage people to contact us for that. I'm working with the University of Massachusetts right now and hopefully going to be working with them in informing and enlightening their students that are going to be going out into the world.
Oh, fabulous.
As exchange students with other countries. There are a number of other things that we're doing in that regard to try to get our message out, and I would love to come back to your program and spend more time, which I could obviously spend a lot of time talking about any one of a number of things that we haven't had time to do today.
That'd be wonderful.
One of which would be the children of the world.
Yeah, and maybe as we wrap up, because it can't be said enough, I think, the message that you want to share with others from your travels, whether through the World Travel Learning Center or in general conversations. Would you sum that up again, please, Bo?
I simply have come back with an understanding that I feel is contrary to what most people think. As I said earlier, the same thing happened with Darwin in his day. He came back with the message that there's something going on in our world that we have not really understood, and it greatly influenced our world. Creationism and evolution, I believe, are not in contradiction with one another. That's a 3-hour conversation. But in my mind, having gone out in the world just to observe like Darwin, I find that the world is so different than I had expected it to be. And in so many ways has enlightened me in a way that I would have never ever have been able to see.
We're going to have to leave it at that. Encourage people to find out so much more through the World Travel Learning Center. Thanks again for being here.
And thank you for having me, Jay.
Pleasure. Yeah. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and look forward to having you next time.